In this video, I would like to go over what is expected of you for paper 2. It is your research proposal paper, you proving to me that your working thesis is workable, that you should be able to go forward with it. So in week 3, you can see the assignment sheet for research paper 2 by clicking on it, and it pops up like this. Basically, it's going to have 4 parts total. The first part is an introduction. In that introduction, you need a bunch of stuff. So you need all this stuff right here. At the bottom, your working thesis, which you developed in Lab 3, and the thesis for this paper. Now, this is an incredibly confusing concept at first, but let's talk about it more and you will totally get it. So, any researcher goes through the process of researching, and it doesn't go from nothing to the final paper in one draft. It doesn't happen like that. Several things happen along the way. Number 1, they make a working thesis just like you did. And then number 2, they usually have a proposal form that they have to submit to somebody, whether it's their boss or the grant organization or their professor. And then after they do that, they do something called an annotated bibliography to go over preliminary sources for their paper. And then after that, they might do some critical analysis of those sources. So there's several papers or assignments along the way, even for professionals in the field. You don't just go from, I have a thesis statement to I'm going to write my final paper. Nobody does that because you would not have as good of a final paper if you did that. So with that being said, when you develop your working thesis, it's what your final paper will prove true. Your thesis statement will emerge from doing all this research and adjusting your working thesis, and your final paper will prove your thesis true. However, any main point of a paper is the paper's thesis. So if the main point of paper 2 is to prove to me that you should be allowed to go forward with your research, then your paper 2 thesis is my research warrants approval. My topic warrants approval. Even though you're going to tell me your working thesis somewhere in the introduction, your main thesis in the introduction should be my topic warrants approval. Let's look at a great student example of this. So I have permission from students to use their work to kind of guide other students. And this, I blocked out the name here, but this is a really good example. And it's as simple as this. So this student wrote about video games, which are really interesting, and I love video games. I play them way too much. So for her thesis, she wrote that she would like to write about the impact of pink games on the industry. Pink games are games that were originally created toward women, created by women, or had more feminine aspects at the time when video games were more binarily gendered. The featured aspects of these games can be found in most video games of this technological era. Pink games have covertly influenced, so here's her working thesis that she came up with in her Lab 3. Pink games have covertly influenced the basic gameplay and design of most popular video games. That's her working thesis. Her main paper thesis. My topic warrants approval because it focuses strictly on the past, and my fascination with this little-known topic will generate effort into research. All right, so that was her My Topic Warrants Approval. Do you see how there's 2 different things here? So as you know, that the main body of any research paper are the CSC sections, claim, support, conclusion sections. So in her claims here then, because we know that she's going to go right into her CSC sections, for her first claim here, she writes, my thesis will only address the influences and importance that pink games have had rather than predicting what influences they may have in the future. In her paper thesis, my topic warrants approval, she actually hints at her claims in that same sentence. She's going to focus strictly in the past. And as you know from past videos, that this is a really big mistake undergraduate researchers make, is projecting into the future. So her first claim is that she will only focus in the past. Do you see how this is a map? That's a map of what she's about to talk about. So she says it in her introduction, what she's about to talk about. She talks about it in the paper. If you go to the end of the CSE paragraph, she reminds readers what she just talked about. And then she'll reiterate that she just talked about that claim again in the conclusion. So every claim has 4 different introductions in a research paper. So let's go to the bottom of this CSE paragraph here. Games have been most profitable and well-liked by including women in the targeted audience, as reported by Ian Bogost, game designer and professor at Georgia Institute of Technology. These key pieces of evidence of the success of Pink Games are concerned exclusively in the past. So it's a round paragraph. It ends where it began. And in the middle here, she has to prove that she will only talk about past things. She writes, various evidence has surfaced of Pink Game's broad influence. In an informal interview, Tess Young, Pink Game designer and animator, describes the history of Pink Gaming and its modern day effects. For example, she explains that Pink Games brought more complexity to storylines. So she's going into information that proves that she has information about what's already happened in the past. This is really good writing. Her in-text citations do have inappropriate commas, if you notice right there. Those shouldn't be there because MLA does not have commas separating the last name and the page number. So this is a great student example of what I'm talking about with your working thesis versus your main paper thesis and the map of how to introduce your claims in the introduction and then make them round. If you notice, the elements that you must include in your introduction are your working thesis, your main paper thesis, some background information concerning the topic, the opposing viewpoint, and your claims, the map of your claims. So some of this could have been done better in this paper. Probably these things here, the background information and the opposing viewpoint. But by and large, this is an excellent paper and a good example for you guys to use as you develop your own papers. So some claims that you can choose from while developing your own papers include that you have prior knowledge of the topic, that your thesis and the topic avoid speculation concerning what should happen and focus on the provable. That's what she had one of her thesis statements on, but instead of saying those fancy words, she just said it'll focus in the past. Strictly in the past. She kind of whittled it down. There is abundant research to support the topic. If that was your claim, then you would show me that there was abundant research in your evidence by citing the actual research that you plan on using. So that means you would need in-text citations. But if your claim is that you have prior knowledge of the topic, you wouldn't cite yourself that you have prior knowledge with an in-text citation. So you would not need in-text citations for that claim. If your claim is that you have curiosity concerning the subject, you would prove to me that you have curiosity by showing me that you've taken classes in the past dealing with the topic, or you've done other things dancing around that topic, maybe after-school project, that sort of thing. So that would not need in-text citations either. So then, from there, we move on to the conclusion. And the conclusion really goes over your main thesis, your working thesis, and the claims of your paper, and that's it. So that's the body of what your paper should look like. And as you see, this student here in her draft submission didn't write the conclusion yet. She wasn't ready to do that. These are just drafts. So it's either a pass-fail grade. Either you did the draft or you didn't. You can choose not to write part of your paper if you're running out of time. In the next video, we're going to go over the details of what bibliographies, annotated bibliographies, works cited references are.